Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Tuesday edition, Facebook Live through BeLive TV. And today we are talking about B12, the super nutrient that we all absolutely need, that we can't make ourselves, and that if you are deficient in it, the symptoms and side effects are really detrimental to health. So let's chat B12. I am Nicolette. I am CEO and founder of The Green Mustache and Richer Health Consulting, and also of our new Richer Health Retreat Center that is going to be opening in Pemberton, British Columbia, where people can come and actually do the Gerson Therapy and live a healthy life for 3 days, 6 days, and eventually up to 1 month at our clinic, and where you'll be supported by 100% organic cold pressed juices, food, 3 meals a day, all the snacks you can eat, even amazing healing desserts. And then you can get massages and acupuncture and work with a counselor, and you can really start to create the lifestyle changes needed to prevent, to arrest, and even to reverse chronic degenerative illnesses. So let's get into B12. We are talking about the wonder drug. All nutrients are so essential to the human body. Like, there's over 82 different vitamins and minerals that are absolutely crucial, but you also have to remember there's a whole host of things going on in our body, in our environment, that we absolutely need that we can't even measure yet. So, that's not even talking about the essential bacteria that we need and the essential the pathogens, the helpful pathogens and the unhelpful pathogens that do work together in balance. There's always a symbiotic relationship that happens in nature, and that's going on in our body as well. And B12 is definitely one of those nutrients that, if you haven't been thinking about it, I want you to start thinking about it now and start getting it into your body on a daily basis and weekly basis, because it is so crucial for brain health and for nervous system function. Now, B12 is one of those vitamins. It's one of the 8 B vitamins, and all of the B vitamins are essential. We absolutely need them in our diet. But B12 is one of those nutrients that we just don't, our body doesn't, our body needs to actually create it, because it's created from microorganisms that live in our digestive system. So it's not one of those nutrients that just get created in our liver and turned over by our body and our organ systems to, so it's one of those things that you absolutely have to be getting it from somewhere. Now, a lot of our listeners are vegan and vegetarian, but one thing to note is, in the whole world of B12, a lot of people think it's just the vegetarians and the vegans that need B12, but that's not the case, actually, because B12 gets absorbed across your gut lining. So if your digestive health is poor, which for most of us in North America that live on a processed food, even if it's an organic processed food or vegan processed food diet, most of us are deficient in B12. And so that goes for meat eaters as well. So yes, B12 is found in salmons and meats and eggs and lots of other animal-based dairy products as well. So if you don't eat a lot of those, and which, we definitely promote not eating a lot of those, or if you do, then you have to know where your dairy and where, in which we shouldn't really even be eating dairy after you finish nursing. But if you're going to eat those meat products, you need to know where they're coming from and make sure that they're clean, that they don't have chemicals and antibiotics and everything in there. For our listeners, though, that are vegan and vegetarian, it is really crucial that you do supplement with B12. And supplementing with B12 means that you have to take an oral or an injectable dose of it to make sure you maintain those B12 levels, but also for the meat eaters, because if you're eating a lot of meat and dairy, you are not digesting vitamins and minerals across your cell linings, so of your gut, because you most likely do have some element of poor digestion, unless you've been a clean, unprocessed food eater. And really, I haven't met very many of you. Okay. A lot of people say, oh, I eat really healthy and I eat really, really clean. And the reason I do house calls in people's homes is so I can actually just go and open up the cupboards and see for myself what you are truly eating. So sometimes I pull out, beautiful boxes. They're amazingly branded and marketed, and they say things like 100% organic, whole wheat, gluten-free, vegan. What are some of the other labels, but at the end of the day, when you look at the ingredients, most of the ingredients, they have a shelf life of more than a year. And really, if we're eating foods that have a shelf life of more than a day or 2 days or 3 days, they're not fresh, wholesome, healing foods for the most part. They are just fillers in our lifestyle. They help us not have to really think about spending much time in the kitchen. They're convenient packaged foods that don't offer a lot of health benefits. They're not going to get you healthy. They're not going to prevent disease. Okay, so anybody who wants to contest me on that, I'm ready to go at it with you. Because those processed packaged foods that are designed to have a shelf life are often packaged with lots of salt content. They have to be, or chemicals we don't even know about, and the effects that they have on our health. And they are usually made out of corn, wheat, sugar, yeast, and a lot of refined flour products. So at the end of the day, healing foods are foods that are grown in a garden, unprocessed, fruits and vegetables, some grains, and they're just eaten in abundance. So I rarely meet people who actually do eat very clean and nutrify their bodies with whole foods. So that means for the 99.9% of you out there that, potentially think you're eating really clean, let's get back into the topic of B12 and where you get this nutrient from. So usually most foods are fortified with B12. And so you're going to have to consume, if you're vegan, I don't promote soy products, but if you do get, any of the plant-based milks, then make sure they're fortified with B12 if you are consuming them. If you like to make your own nut milks and plant-based milks at home, you're going to need to take a supplement. If you're not eating packaged processed food that is fortified with all the nutrients that we're missing, then you're going to have to supplement at home. And you can do this via injections. I teach my clients how to give themselves B12 injections with crude liver oil, especially for those that are doing something like the Gerson Therapy to reverse their cancer and chronic disease. That's the best way, most absorbable way to get the B12 directly into your system. And, and it's easy to do. If you think about it, people inject themselves every single day with insulin. Here, we're just injecting ourselves with B12. And it is crucial. It's the only one supplement on the Gerson protocol that you would inject. Everything else is taken orally. Now, most of us don't really want to have to mess around with needles and fuss with that. So you can take a sublingual form of B12. Now, a sublingual form means it's just a tablet that you pop underneath your tongue, let it melt. It'll get absorbed into your system really quickly, and that is something that you're going to need to do. So B12 is a water-soluble vitamin, so you don't have to be worried about it. So if it breaks down in the body in water, and then if you're taking too much, then you excrete it in your urine or sweat it out, etc. One of the things with B12 as well is that when you're taking it, there's 3 different forms of B12. So, what form do you buy? Now, B12 is really cheap, so there's no excuse for not taking B12. You get 500 pills, I think, or sometimes 1,000 pills in a little tiny bottle, and it's like $12. So, and it is definitely, if there's any nutrient out there that, I would say have it on your shelf, in your kitchen, in your bathroom, and beside your bed, it is B12. So the 3 different forms you can get are methylcobalamin, cyanocobalamin, and hydroxycobalamin. Now, skip the cyanocobalamin. Cyanocobalamin is made from cyanide, and your body actually has to go through 2 different processes to get it converted into methylcobalamin, and you want that for cellular methylation. Now, you can read all about that on your own. I'm not going to go into the biochemistry of that, but basically you absolutely need B12 for that. So skip the cyanocobalamin, which can potentially produce a secondary toxin in your body, and just go straight to the methylcobalamin, and that's the one that you want. Hydroxycobalamin, I find it's more hard to find, and you know what, if you're just sticking to the methylcobalamin, then you're great. Like I said, it's like $12, depending where you are in the world, but about $12 for buying a bottle of this. And you can get it in 5,000 milligram tabs, which means you can just break them into half and a quarter. And the recommended daily allowance is about 3 micrograms, but most of us are deficient. So that's really not enough to restore your nutrient deficiency. So on the Gerson protocol, when anybody comes to us with a chronic disease, poor digestion, cancer, they're taking 1,000 milligrams a day. Micrograms a day. And that's the standard form. So I give this to my kids. My kids know to take it every single day. It's safe. And like I said, it's water soluble. So go out there, get the methylcobalamin version. Now, how do you know if you're deficient in B12? So one of the things that I really, can't stand. Thank you, Haley, by the way, for posting your comment. Feel free to post comments online, everyone. So one of the things that I'm about to tell you what the symptoms of B12 deficiency are, but often you don't just have one symptom related to one nutrient deficiency. If you're experiencing these symptoms, chances are it's not just B12, but it's a host of other deficiencies. Like it's probably, if you're deficient in nutrients, it means you're probably not absorbing nutrients and converting nutrients properly in your body. So as hesitant as I am to list the deficiencies, please, because the minute I start listing them, it's like the placebo effect. You guys are going to all start feeling these symptoms. Okay, so remember, if you're deficient and if you feel like you have these symptoms of B12 deficiency, you're probably deficient in a host of other nutrients. So seriously, please, people, make sure that you're also getting those 82 other nutrients into your body, hopefully in the form of 100% organic, whole foods, plant-based, real food, unprocessed foods. Okay, so let's get into the symptoms. Here we go. So anemia. Okay, if you're anemic, you probably have a B12 deficiency. Any nervous system disorders, you probably have a B12 deficiency. Gut issues, digestive issues, B12 deficiency. Dizziness, infertility, pins and needles in your extremities, pale complexion. We have forgetfulness, fatigue, vision, moodiness. The list goes on. Heart disease is one of the biggest ones. And since heart disease is a national killer, it's like the second leading cause of death next to cancer. Really, maybe we're all just vitamin B12 deficient, but also, again, not just the B12, but the host of other vitamins and minerals. But supplementing with this nutrient is important. And here is why. For a lot of us, we don't realize that we're B12 deficient for at least 5 years because our body has ability to store the B12 and use it over time. But if you're deficient, it could take 5 years for symptoms to show up. Now, what I would get onto Dr. Terry Wall's protocol, read her literature, watch her TEDx video or TED video, follow all of her research. She's got FDA approved clinical trials that are happening. And Dr. Terry Walls was diagnosed with MS. Okay, she was a highly well-respected medical doctor, medical practice. She was in a teaching hospital. So she was teaching other medical students, and she was diagnosed with MS. And she eventually reached the point where she, had to walk with canes, and then she had to pretty much be in an anti-gravity chair for extended periods of time. Couldn't walk, couldn't practice. And while she was laying there in her anti-gravity chair, she started really wondering, well, what causes MS? And it's nervous system damage. And, a host of other things that are happening. But what happens is that if you're deficient in these nutrients, basically your myelin sheath starts to break down, and then nervous system disorders kick in. So with Dr. Terry Walls, she started to put together a diet to supplement with these nutrients that she felt she was deficient in. And at first she started to do it with supplements, right? She had never been taught this in med school. So she had to go back to her basic biochemistry and biology texts and figure out, what do nutrient deficiencies have to do with health? And she had to teach herself. So as she was doing that, she thought, okay, well, I'll start supplementing with supplements to restore these nutrient deficiencies. And it started working. Her MS symptoms started to reverse and she started to get better. But when she decided to make the leap and actually supplement using whole foods, organic plant-based foods, all of a sudden her healing went through the roof. And within 6 months, she had reversed her MS symptoms to the point that she can go biking and hiking. And she went and did, I believe, the Appalachian Trail. And this is coming from someone who was walking with 2 canes and in an anti-gravity chair. And you see her before and after photos are unbelievable. I have huge respect for Dr. Terry Walls because she did what a lot of my clients have to do. They hit rock bottom. The doctors say there's nothing we can do for you. And she's a medical doctor who is receiving some of the best drugs out there to combat her MS. And over the period of like 6-7 years, they weren't working and her MS symptoms just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And then she took her health into her own hands. She started doing the research and all of a sudden her health reversed. Her MS symptoms reversed. And the interesting thing is then all of a sudden you see this well-respected doctor because she reversed a chronic degenerative disease that is considered incurable. And she did it with nutrition and food. All of a sudden, all the people start coming out of the woodwork to call her a quack, right? To say, oh, there's no science in nutrient-based medicine. Come on, people. Seriously, quackery is when you literally are selling snake oil, when you are trying to sell something that is, it doesn't work at all. But, there's thousands of people out there that have done exactly what Dr. Terry Walls has done and reversed their chronic degenerative diseases, including cancer, by restoring their nutrient deficiencies, which then boost your body's immune system and your metabolism, and all other organ systems start to regenerate and repair. Your tissue becomes healthy, and then your body starts to detoxify and it starts to eliminate the buildup of waste that it hasn't been able to get out. And that toxic buildup of waste creates damage to our organ systems and our tissue, and it further prevents our body from healing. So Dr. Terry Walls, she took the bull by the horns, or she pulled up the reins, or whatever the saying is, and she took charge of her own health, and she reversed multiple sclerosis. And now she has clinical FDA-approved trials that is showing huge success as well. So follow Dr. Terry Walls. We'll provide the link after this talk. So poor digestion. Poor digestion absolutely prevents nutrients from being absorbed across the cell wall. And so if you have poor digestion, you need to repair that, because it won't matter how much vitamins you're taking and minerals you're supplementing with. You're just not going to be able to absorb them. So people, you have to clean up your digestion. And the easiest way to do that is by getting rid of all the processed foods, all the salt, the sodium, and really reverting back to food as medicine. So really eating a nutrient-dense plant-based diet. So let's get back to B12. So now let's just say you've cleaned up your digestion, you start to repair your body, you're supplementing with B12, which you have to do because it can take 5 to 20 years. And that was the one point I wanted to bring up. Dr. Terry Walls had been a vegetarian for 20 years, and she reflected on that time and realized she never really paid much attention to nutrients. She paid more attention to eliminating meat out of her diet, but not to, making sure she was getting nutrients into her body. So again, I always like to ask this question in workshops, who's the lazy vegetarian and the lazy vegan, and who is the hardworking vegan and vegetarian? Now, the hardworking vegans and vegetarians are the ones that are really preparing a lot of their foods at home. You're eating a lot of real foods that don't come out of a box or a package, but they actually come from a farmer's market, your own garden, or the grocery store in the produce section. And you supplement a little bit with legumes and grains and all of those things. But predominantly, you're eating a diversity and abundance of nutrients from, plant-based sources. So that's a really hardworking vegan, and it's not easy to do that really well, or a vegetarian. For example, some of our staff at the Green Mustache have been vegetarians their entire life, but when I find out what they're eating, I find out that they're eating pasta and canned tomato sauces. That's not a really hardworking, diligent vegan or vegetarian. You're going to be missing so many nutrients, but you're also taking in so many processed foods and salt. Salt is an enzyme inhibitor, and all of those foods contain large amounts of sodium. And so, you end up doing more harm, which is why a lot of the staff that I've had at the Green Mustache who have been longtime vegans and vegetarians, they're not healthy. They suffer from migraines, indigestion, poor gut health, skin disorders, everything. The minute they start working at the Green Mustache and they see what it means to eat in a nutrient-dense way, a nutrient plant-rich way, they see that when they get a huge abundance and a variety of nutrients and it's not packaged or processed, they actually start healing, okay? But again, to restore a nutritional deficiency, you are not most likely going to be able to get enough of the nutrients to restore your deficiency back up to optimum health level without having to invest in some form of supplement. Okay, so let's get back to, you know how much to take, right? You're going to take methylcobalamin as your first choice. If you cannot find it, then get the hydroxycobalamin. And if you can't find that, take the cyanocobalamin. But first choice is methylcobalamin. The easiest way to do it is sublingual, underneath your tongue. Take 1,000 micrograms a day, and to restore nutrition, B12 deficiency. Once it's restored, then they say the RDA level recommendation is about 30 micrograms a day. But I just like to stick to the 1,000 milligrams a day. Now, let's talk again about supporting your brain health and your nervous system health. And again, it's going to take years for those deficiencies to show up. So what's absolutely important is you start today with supplementing with your B12 and cleaning up your digestion so that in 5 years, 10 years, you don't have to face any of these nervous system disorders. Okay. Now, how do you get tested for B12. So if you want to find out if you are deficient, the easiest way to go and do that is to go straight to your doctor, request blood work, and they're going to check for two things. They're going to want to look at your MMA levels, which is your methylmalonic acid levels in your body, and your homocysteine levels as well. So those are two levels that if those are elevated even in the least amount, it's often an indication that you are B12 deficient. Now you have to remember, anytime you go and get blood work done, you have to, and depending, it's going to be different in all parts of the world. Every country, every government agency sets the low levels and the high levels for what's acceptable levels for nutrients, minerals, blood levels, etc. So you have to double check and make sure that you're not going to be suffering from a subclinical condition, which means that you might be on the low side, but well within the realms that the government has set. But what happens if you come in just before that? Does that mean that you're B12 deficient or not? Technically, your doctor won't recognize it as a B12 deficiency, but you need to really check and see and make sure that those levels weren't set on a population that was already deficient. Okay, so that's one of the issues with getting blood work done and seeing what your high levels and low levels are. So you want to ask your doctor, make sure when they are testing that they're testing for those two levels. So it's a methylmalonic MMA, you can just say acid levels, and homocysteine levels. Now, if you do have elevated levels, this is directly correlated with higher chances of developing heart disease, having preeclampsia during pregnancy, having infertility issues, having anemia, having like the whole host of symptoms that I talked about. Okay, so definitely check and make sure that those levels are not elevated. If you have trouble getting blood work, because you may go into your doctor and say, hey, I want to see if I'm deficient in X, Y, and Z, particular B12, because that's what we're talking about. And they may look at you and be like, do you have dizziness, mental fog, fatigue, moodiness? And you're like, no, I feel great. That's great, because you might feel great because you have a great, active, awesome lifestyle. But remember, it can take 5 to 10 years for B12 deficiencies to creep up. So tell them that you're vegan and vegetarian and just demand the blood work and say, I need this because I'm trying to be preventative. And you're going to have to demand that blood work. Now, I went into a doctor's office roughly 10 years ago, just before I started doing my Gerson training, because I needed my blood work down at the Institute in San Diego, where I was doing my training, because we had to analyze our own blood work so that we can teach others how to analyze their blood work, because we don't want to just leave that analysis in the hands of your doctor, who's just going to look at those levels and be like, you're fine. Because we all know, for the most part, everybody's blood work really comes out as being well balanced. It needs to maintain homeostasis. But what it doesn't tell you, your blood might be balanced well because it's constantly drawing nutrients and minerals out of our organs and our tissues. But how do you tell if your tissues and your organs are depleted and suffering? Often you can't really tell that unless you get a biopsy or run more stringent tests, and no doctor's ever going to do that. So they go with blood work. But it's why I have so many clients who have cancer and chronic illness, and they've been going to the doctors for 2 years and saying, I don't feel well, something's wrong. They get blood work done and the doctor says, no, we can't find anything wrong with you. Your blood work is perfect. And then meanwhile, they come in all of a sudden when their blood levels crash, and that's when they end up in an emergency room situation. They're in extreme pain, and then that's when they often get diagnosed with stage 4 cancer or some form of debilitating chronic disease where surgery is the next option, or heavy duty drugs. You don't want to get to that point. But the thing is that just by going and getting blood work isn't going to be an indicator. So you're going to have to really finesse this dance around how do you really understand if you're deficient or not. And so you're just going to have to go in and demand. So I went in and I just made the case with my doctor. I said, listen, I'm trying to be preventative. I'm not saying I have cancer, but I want to run this host of blood work so that I can really understand where I am on my own scale, not compared to anybody else. And he looked at me, and the doctor said, well, you look healthy and you don't have cancer. I can tell you don't have cancer. And I was like, what? How do you tell if somebody has cancer or not? Because most of my clients that I have are gorgeous. They have amazing hair. They have amazing skin. They're glowing for the most part, and they have stage 4 cancer, massive tumors growing inside of them. Or their blood levels are indicating that they have cancer. But for years, they've been told that they're healthy. Come on. you're going to have to do this work. So when you go in there, demand that you get the B12 test done. And that's how they're going to find out, by checking your MMA and your homocysteine levels. Now, what are some other things that I want to say about B12? Let's just recap what I went over. We have about 5 minutes left here. So again, if you do eat plant-based products, you can get some B12 through the meat, and it's really the microorganisms that you're getting that are going to create that B12 in your digestive system. But you can get it through the eggs and the meat. And if you are going to eat those products, please just keep them to a minimum. I love what Michael Pollan, says about meat products and animal products, is that really use them as a garnish, okay? And Dr. Carolyn Dean, she's written about magnesium for the last 30 plus years, and I love how she talks about meat and animal products, and basically says, you need to eat like your ancestors, and not like your ancestors like your great-grandmother. You need to go back 300 years, back to your country of origin, and you need to eat like your ancestors did 300 or 400 years ago, because genetically to evolve genetically takes a long time. It takes hundreds and hundreds of years. So if you start to eat like your ancestors did, you are most likely going to be able to regenerate your health and get your health back. Now, here's the key to doing that, okay? So Michael Pollan says use animal-based products as like a garnish, right? It's like your whole plate would be full of beautiful plant, nutrient-rich, whole food, real food from the garden products. And then you're going to have a little bit of grains and legumes. And then you're going to use your animal-based products as garnish, right? It's going to be like almost like how you see most vegetables in fine dining places used. Mostly they're just garnish. And so it's the opposite of what you're used to. Now, we advocate for just getting rid of all the animal-based products because they don't really serve you, okay? You can do the extra work. You can switch to a plant-based, nutrient-rich diet, and you can get all the nutrients, the omega-3s, the proteins, carbohydrates, all the right fats, all the right sugars from a beautiful plant-rich diet. Not only will you be supporting the environment, because we know the amount of water and land use that gets taken up by producing animal products. Let's just eliminate that whole part of the system, and instead we can grow nutrient-rich foods to feed humans and and maybe our pets, right? So we don't have to be using up all of that land to grow meat, which then we consume, which then harms our health, creates methane, and so much waste in the world. That we end up having to use crazy drugs to be able to keep these animals healthy. We might as well be using the nutrients for ourselves as humans, and let's free up those animals to be friends as opposed to being food. So if you are vegan or vegetarian, you definitely are going to have to eat foods that are fortified with B12 nutrients. But the problem with that is if you're turning to packaged processed food, you also get the whole host of other products that you don't necessarily want, like the preservatives, the high sugars, refined salts, all of those. So ultimately, the best way is to turn to a plant-based diet and then supplement with a supplement form of B12. Again, it's water soluble, like we talked about in the beginning. So that's great. Use the methylcobalamin. We keep it on the counter. Our kids get it. My mom gets it. My husband takes it. I take it. We all take it, because we're not going to risk 5 to 10 years from now having to face heart disease issues and neurological damage and poor brain support. So that's why you're taking B12, is because you want to avoid all of those things. Again, go out and get tested. Super important to get tested for B12 deficiency, but all of your other deficiencies as well. Like, what about vitamin D? Like, let's talk about all of those nutrients, because again, if you're not absorbing B12 across your gut lining, you're probably not absorbing a lot of other nutrients and minerals that you absolutely need in your tissues, in your organs, in your cells, in your blood. To create a healthy, resilient body that's able to fight disease, beat disease, avoid disease, and also repair from disease, right? Because we are all subjected to that in this world that we're living in. So again, go get tested. Tell me what you find after your blood results do come in, and get on track with restoring with B12. I've read lots of other blogs and people who talk about B12, and a lot of them just say take the cyanocobalamin. And the reason they say to take that one is because it's cheap, but it's actually not that much cheaper if at all compared to your methylcobalamin. So that is definitely the way forward with taking B12. If you have any other questions, definitely email us. And let's talk now about our wellness center and retreat center. So our wellness center is going to be opening up in November 2017, Pemberton, BC. And our wellness center is a place for people who want to prevent, want to arrest, so stop, and who want to reverse a chronic degenerative disease. It is a place where people can come and you are going to show up. You're going to be handed a cold pressed juice. You're going to be given all your meals. Everything's 100% organic, locally sourced when it is available and growing by our beautiful local organic farmers like Root Down, Bandit Farms, Laughing Crow Organics, Ice Cap. We have incredible organic farmers in Pemberton, BC. We have 1 acre of land. Next year, we're going to have a gorgeous organic biodynamic farm where with seating areas where our clients and guests can come and meditate, rest, breathe in the good air, and sit in these biodynamic gardens that are going to be flourishing with the plants and the flowers that the bees love, that the butterflies love, all the pollinators love. You'll be able to get massages on site through registered massage therapists. You'll be able to book acupuncture appointments, wellness coaching, because when we're looking at disease, we have to look at the entire body, which means we need to look at our brain. So, they say that we have 3 brains. Our gut is a brain, our heart is a brain, and our brain is a brain. And so we have to make sure that all of them are kept in balance and in check. So counseling is really important because we're dealing with lifestyle illnesses. Chronic degenerative diseases, it's a breakdown in our body's ability to keep itself strong and to warrant off disease. And when our body breaks down slowly over time, those are chronic degenerative diseases. And those include all the autoimmune disorders, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, cancer, multiple sclerosis, autoimmune disorder, nervous system disorders, all of these disorders that can be prevented just by simply having enough nutrients and minerals in our body and not having the toxins that we take in a daily basis. So when you're at the wellness center, you're going to have filtered water. You get to rest at night in clean beds made of natural materials. So you're not going to be breathing in like harsh chemicals in your sheets and in your beds. Our place is bright and white and spacious, and you'll be able to rest, recuperate, and learn how to eat real to heal. So we'll have lectures on site. You'll get involved in learning how to prepare these meals at home. You'll leave with meal plans so that when you leave our wellness center, you can carry all of that on and create your own wellness center in your own home. So stay tuned. Our website is www.richerhealthretreatcenter.com. If you need to book we can do it online or in person, a consulting session. So we can particularly talk about your particular illness and disease. If you want to learn how to eat to beat your disease, contact us at richerhealth.ca and we can book an appointment for you. And then if you just need help staying on track and eating clean, healthy meals, organic all the time, plant rich, you can visit one of our Green Mustache cafes. We currently have 3 locations in Whistler and Squamish, and we're opening up 3 more locations on the North Shore and in Revelstoke. And if you want to bring health and wellness to your community, think about opening up a Green Mustache in your neighborhood so you can give health back to yourself, to your neighbors, family, and friends, and your community. Stay tuned for next week when we talk more about health and wellness, restoring nutrient deficiencies, and eating real to heal from cancer and chronic disease. Thanks for being with me. Have an amazing day.